Welcome to Kilsyth Cemetery as we commemorate the final resting place of the great Jimmy Quinn, one of the most iconic players to have worn a Celtic jersey. We would like to thank the Quinn family for allowing us this privilege. If the mark of a man could be judged by his nicknames, then Jimmy Quinn had plenty. The Mighty Quinn, the Croy Express, the Equator, and even King James. Our first guest speaker, in comparison, was known simply as the Bunnet. But don't be fooled by the lack of nicknames, because history will judge Fergus McCann's contribution to Celtic just as highly as Quinn, McGrory or Larson's, because if it wasn't for Fergus, we'd have no more legends. Not only did Fergus save our club on the 97th anniversary of the family's taking over the club on the 4th of March 1897, he opened the doors to the Celtic support to become shareholders. And boy, did we respond after a century in waiting. The current ground is the ground that Fergus built, backed by the Celtic support. And the fact that we're light years ahead of the rest of Scottish football adds up to an incredible legacy. Before introducing our other guest speakers, I'd like us all at this point to show our appreciation to Fergus McCann with a round of applause. Thank you. Our next speaker is Lisbon Lion Jim Craig. The Celtic Graves Society are very fortunate to have Jim as our patron, for not only is he a Celtic legend, but his knowledge of our history is up there with the best. Next we have David Potter, author of over a dozen Celtic books, including The Mighty Quinn, the Jimmy Quinn book. David will give us a commentary in his own wonderful style of the famous 1904 Scottish Cup final when Jimmy Quinn scored a hat-trick as we come back from 2 goals down to beat Rangers 3-2. Last but not least is Terry Dick. You'll be familiar with the voice of Terry's father, Glenn Daly, as he sings the Celtic song every time we take to the field at Celtic Park. I've never heard Terry sing, but he is without doubt the raconteur extraordinaire as he brings the Celtic story to life. Father Tracey from St Patrick's Kilsyth will then conduct the blessing of the Celtic Cross, which has been expertly restored by Danny Rooney. Fittingly, it was Danny's father who erected this stone in 1988 with the support of the family and also the Celtic board. We'll then lay some flowers on the grave before I say a few words of thanks. Then we close the ceremony and get some pictures taken. We must also welcome today 2 ex-Celts from Kilsyth to the ceremony, Pat McCluskey and Danny Craney. Said in jest that the people of Kilsyth and Croy are related through drink. Maybe no in jest. But we must pay tribute to you with your strong Celtic connections. In fact, after St Peter's Cemetery, Dolbeth near Celtic Park, which holds 32 ex-Celts, management and founding fathers, it is this cemetery that is next, with the largest amount of ex-Celts on this hallowed ground, totalling 9. Alongside Jimmy Quinn, our 2 teammates, Andy McAtee and Tommy McAteer, the 3 boys from Croy who played in the Scottish Cup final win of 1911, known as the Crojan Cup Final. Amongst other Celts at rest here are Jimmy Quinn's grandson of the same name, John Morrison, who played in the Empire Exhibition Cup Final in 1938, and Frank Meakin, who played in the 50s. In fact, we're very proud to have with us today Tony McAtee. Tony McAtee is a great nephew of Andy McAtee. He's here along with his daughter Tony Louise. Ashley McAtee, Tony's other daughter, is smiling down on us from heaven as we speak. Of that I have no doubt, Tony. So Jimmy Quinn is in very good company, and the towns of Kilsyth and Croy should be extremely proud of this part of the part this area has played in the Celtic story. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Fergus McCann, the man who saved Celtic, back in his hometown, where his love of the club grew, to say a few words. Fergus McCann.
Thank you very much, and I will say very little because traditionally, from my memory in Kilsyth, people in Kilsyth seldom spoke to people from Croy. So I hope you understand that. I would only say what a great celebration that is, the memory of Jimmy Quinn. I did go to school with his grandson, Jimmy, who had some resemblance to his grandfather. And he was not as great a footballer, of course, but he certainly made sure that we all knew a lot about his family and their great success. And so it's a great pleasure just to be here and to be part of this ceremony and to join with you in celebrating the memory of a great Celtic player. Thank you very much for inviting me, and I'll pass it on to the officials here. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Fergus. I'd like to ask Jim Craig now to say a few words.
Ladies and gentlemen, this man was a star by any stretch of the imagination. Way back in the early years of the 20th century, there was no TV, there was no radio. Football coverage was not great. There were not the features that you get nowadays in the papers telling you about a man's background and all that kind of thing. But everybody knew Quinn of Celtic, and every Celtic fan of the time knew that when Quinn's name was down there, the team had a chance. They played a 2-3-5 formation in those days. Two midfield players, inside forwards they called them back then. One a slightly deeper player who was the kind of brains behind the whole thing. One slightly further forward. He was pick up the scraps of things that happen near goal. He was more the goal scorer than the kind of deep line one. And then you had two wingers, and then you had Quinn at the apex. He was lucky, Jimmy, in a sense, that he came into Celtic. He had 4 years where things were not great. He got played very often outside left, and then he eventually went to centre forward, and suddenly the team clicked. And that team went on to win 6 league titles in a row and several Scottish Cups as well. So from that point of view, he was lucky. They never earned a great deal of money as footballers back then. I mean, that was the same in the 1960s as well, by the way. But we earned roughly about £4 a week at a time when a rigger in the yards, in the shipyards, or a caulker, or a metal worker was earning about 25 shillings a week. A miner was earning 6 shillings a week in 1900. So for Jimmy, it was quite a considerable difference to get to that stage. But all that I've read about him, and I mean, I'm full of admiration for what he did for Celtic, and also for what he did for Scottish football as well. The one thing I really love is that at a time now where, because of their wealth, not particularly in Scotland, but certainly in England and other parts of the world, footballers are earning so much money that they're becoming a bit detached from their fans. This man travelled by train every morning from Croy to Queen Street Station, and then walked down and took a tram to Celtic Park. And that's a bit about Jimmy Quinn that I've always thought was quite wonderful. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'd like to thank the Graves Society for all the work they put into this. I'm proud to be a member of the society, and I'm very proud to be here today. And I hope that you all take away the memory of Jimmy Quinn with you, because he deserves to be right up there in the pantheon of great Celts. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks very much, Jim. Now ask David Potter to say a few words of the 1904 Cup final. This, of course, is the ball from that game.
And we welcome you today to Hampden Park with the news, the bad news for you Celtic fans, that Rangers are already 2 goals up. We are approaching half-time. It's Rangers 2, Celtic 0. Celtic with a strange team on today. Perhaps you expected Alec Bennett to be at centre-forward, but in fact it's young Jimmy Quinn from Croy who's at centre-forward. But wait a minute, Croy's got the ball. Quinn's got the ball, rather. He kicks the ball forward. The ball holds up in the wind. He runs between 2 Rangers players. Another one comes across. I think it's Nick Smith, tries to tackle him, but Jimmy avoids it. He's at the edge of the box. Watson comes out to narrow the angle, and Quinn scores. It's a goal for Celtic. Celtic are back in the game. Celtic are back in the game as we approach half-time. And now it's Jimmy Young. Jimmy Young sends a long ball up the right wing to his ex-colleague from Bristol Rovers, Bobby Muir. Bobby Muir runs down the right wing, beats a couple of men, sends a ball across, and it's another goal. Celtic are back in the game. It's 2-2. It's near half-time, 2-2. And I think it's Quinn who's scored again. I think it's Quinn, yes. It's Quinn who's accepting the congratulations of all his fans and all his players. And he walks back, quite a thing, saying, come on, we've more to do in the second half. Now, 10 minutes are left in the second half. It's still 2-2. Still 2-2. It seems to me that Celtic are gradually gaining the ascendancy in this game. In this half-back line of Young, Loney and Hay, they seem to have something rather special. And it's Jimmy Hay. Jimmy Hay sends a long ball up. Finds Jimmy Quinn. Jimmy Quinn with two Rangers players round him. Jimmy Quinn runs through them again. And once again, Nick Smith comes across, tackles him, but Jimmy Quinn keeps going. Jimmy Quinn keeps going. And Watson comes out to narrow the angle, but Quinn scores. And it's a goal for Celtic. It's another goal for Celtic. Celtic are now winning 3-2, and there is only a few minutes left for play. I notice now that Mr. Robertson, the referee of Queen's Park, he's looking at his watch. It is almost full time. Yes, and he blows for full time. Celtic have won the 1904 Scottish Cup. It is their fourth Scottish Cup victory, and I see the hero of the hour, Jimmy Quinn. Jimmy Quinn accepting the congratulations of all his teammates. He is the man who will be, this cup final will be remembered. I can imagine that in over 100 years' time, people will still be talking about this particular Scottish Cup final.
I think in 100 years' time we'll still be talking about that commentary. Terry Dick.
Reverend Fathers, ladies and gentlemen, my fellow Celtic supporters. The Edwardian era was one rich in sporting celebrity and achievement, and that most Scottish of games, dismissed by one unkind observer as the waste of a good walk, Harry Varden and Scot James Braid dominated the Open Championship. At the All England Club, Laurie and Reggie Docherty, along with Tim Wilding, swept all before them in the Wimbledon tournament. Cricket, of course, could boast the iconic and venerable W.G. Grace, and also the man who reshaped the history of bat and ball, the master, Jack Hobbs. The peerless Billy Meredith, a miner from North Wales mining community, was the star of English Association football, appearing for over 750 times for Manchester United and City. In the hooligan game, played by gentlemen, the Celtic nations held sway in the Rugby Nations Championship. A particular source of pride for Glaswegians was Tommy Lipton, millionaire grocer, friend of the King, internationally famed yachtsman. Born at 10 Crown Street in Glasgow's Gorbals, his parents came from Clones, County Monaghan. He challenged consistently for the America's Cup in a series of yachts called Shamrock. And in America, Jack Johnson, the first black heavyweight champion of the world, in spite of searing racism, ensured with his ringcraft and power that a succession of great white hopes remained aspirational and usually horizontal. In the East End of the second city of the empire, playing in the famed green and white colours of Glasgow Celtic, a daring, dauntless boy had established himself as one of the truly great centre forwards, the idol of all Celtic hearts. His memory remains evergreen. The great Jimmy Quinn from Croy. A working class hero is something to be. If you want to be a hero, then just follow me. Jimmy Quinn was an inspirational sporting hero of the first measure. His greatness owed much to the values of his native village and the Irish immigrant mining community from which he came. They had been the unwelcome sprigs of shamrock who came in search of bread, work, and the renewal of hope, bludgeoned into forced exile from that sore and oppressive land that they called the Shamrock Shore. And like that dear little shamrock, they would thrive in spite of adversity, growing through bog, brake, and mireland. Courage, dignity, and faith maintained them in the toughest and grimmest of industries, King Coal. Death and disaster in black, narrow tunnels, crawling through clinging mud in blinding and choking coal dust, treated as little more than serfs, shackled by the insecurity of squalid and inadequate tied housing owned by the coal masters, impoverished by monstrously unfair deductions from already meagre wages, exploited by the pernicious truck system and the company store, which kept them in a permanent state of indebtedness, made weak and vulnerable, unable to organise by the imposition of yellow dog contracts. They were looked upon as subhuman beings. Their only purpose was to produce coal and profits for the owners. Their dreams were often tossed and blown. Hope became despair. But they were determined, talented, and industrious. They would succeed, and they were here to stay. These were Jimmy Quinn's people. This was his heritage. With Celtic and Scotland, he would represent them with unfailing honour and distinction. Jimmy Quinn was a superstar before the term even existed. The performance of what Woods and Campbell called this primal force required journalists and fans alike to use heroic, epic, and always dramatic language. And so, Quinn tore at defences like a tiger or a young lion, with bustling bolts and lightning speed. Diesel-powered, he thundered towards goal. His runs were powerful, dashing, and deadly. He sprang and burst through defences. He was an electric flash, a charging bison. And when he shot, with the rapidity of a machine gun, crossbars shook, motionless goalkeepers quaked, and blasting cannonballs whizzed into bulging, bursting rigging. And then stands rose as one man to deliriously hail the valiant, courageous hero. But Jimmy Quinn was no fiction from the pages of a boy's adventure comic. He was a sensational, charismatic, talented football great. And they tried to stop him with what Willie Maley called wicked fouls. But he had too much fire, energy, power, and brilliance for him. Today, these vanquished opponents languish in obscurity, while Quinn retains an immortal memory. What was the secret? Was it the miracle cure-all, Bogue's rheumatic rum, which he endorsed? Or even although he had declined the offer to be the Bar's Iron Brew poster boy, was he still made of girders, but it was Scottish steel tempered with Irish fire? Or was it simply that Jimmy Quinn could score the goals that other number 9s couldn't, and that the Dundee Courier wasn't guilty of exaggeration or even blasphemy with its headline, "In Quinn, all things are possible." Sure, they're the best darn team in Scotland, and the players all are grand. We'll support the Celtic, as they are the finest in the land. We love them. From 1904 to 10, this lyric was true of a Celtic team loved and revered by the faithful. 6 in a row, league championship record holders. And what a forward line. A young, eager Celtic pack, spearheaded by Jimmy Quinn. A litany, 5 sweet symphonies, and they were all tunes of glory. As a classic from musical stage maybe would put it, say it soft, and it's almost like praying. Bennett, McMenemy, Quinn, Summers and Hamilton. But no player was more loved than Jimmy, because the supporters realised that for him it wasn't just a game. It was a passion and a commitment to a team, a cause and a people for which he gave absolutely everything. He was adored because he was thrilling to watch. To witness a Quinn goal was to be present at a great sporting drama with breathtaking choreography, a sudden, darting, dynamic run, a final crashing, unsavable shot, a blur of a football which threatened to tear the net to tatters. He was indeed the centre of the earth, the Iron Man, the equator. Faith and charity may come from on high, but hope sprang eternal, and paradise could always be regained when Quinn led the line. Above all, the people, the Celtic people, were as one with him. As Colm Brogan, distinguished journalist and broadcaster, said at the time of his death, the Celtic supporters just didn't follow his play. They played alongside him. The days of our youth are the days of our glory. Jimmy Quinn's playing career was indeed a glorious one, accompanied by cheers and triumph. On the eve of Jimmy's retiral, Sir John Muir Primrose, Rangers chairman, presented him with a set of pipes, a respectful gift in recognition of his amazing scoring record against the Ibrox club. On that occasion, Sir John perhaps painfully recalled exhibition football, a hat-trick, and a gilded cup taken from his club in 1902. The Scottish Cup final of 1904, Quinn triumphant and Rangers left in the lonely furrow of humiliation and defeat. The Celts, playoff champions in 1905, doubles in 1906 and 7, yet another Celtic first. Quinn may have had the blood of Brian Boru rather than Bruce in his veins, but in spite of being often controversially omitted and consistently played out of position, he wore the dark blue of his country with distinction. A 4-goal performance against Ireland in Dublin and a rash of Irish press coverage to equal anything Parnell, Redmond, even Lord Carson, Count John McCormick, or an Irish Derby winner would have received. Battered and bruised by rough treatment in a match against Wales, he snatched a last-minute winner to send the crowd into raptures. Now's the day, and now's the hour. See the front, O battle lower. see approach proud Edward's power, and indeed they came for a classic encounter at Hampden in 1910 in front of 106,000 spectators. McMenemy and Quinn, two great Celts, put the old enemy to the sword with a goal apiece, securing the British Championship, and sent them homeward to think again. The English press were magnanimous in acknowledging what every Celt already knew, that Jimmy Quinn was the finest centre forward in Britain. Many the tramp of feet down Janefield Street since the glory days of Quinn. A century and generations of Celts have gone, but the triumphs, the legend and the man are undiminished. He is one of the truly great who passed through Parkhead's gates to play stylish, skillful football, to thrill and to entertain, to win the Glasgow Celtic way. Today, we celebrate a distinguished and glorious history and rightly honour a Celt who made it. The celebrity that the Montreal Standard declared to be the most famous centre forward in the world. The player described by Willie Maley as half the Celtic team and loved by every good sport who ever saw him play. The great centre forward of unconquerable will, never to yield or submit. The collier lad from Croy, who brought glory to the green and his community, the keystone of a great and grand old Celtic team. He was indeed the captain of Celtic soul, the incomparable Croy Express. His name itself is history, the one and only Jimmy Quinn.
The one and only Jerry Dick. I'd like to ask Father Tracey to conduct the blessing, please.
So let us pray. Oh, praise to you, Lord of all creation. Praise to you, holy and living God. We praise and bless you for your mercy. We praise and bless you for your kindness. You sanctify the homes of the living and make holy the places of the dead. You alone open the gates of righteousness and lead us to the dwellings of the saints. We praise you, our refuge and strength. We bless you, our God and Redeemer. Your praise is always in our hearts and on our lips, as we remember the mighty deeds of your covenant. Almighty and ever-living God, remember the mercy with which you graced your servant Jimmy in life. Grant that our brother may sleep here in peace until you awaken him to glory. For you are the resurrection and the life. Then he will see you face to face, and in your light will see light and know the splendour of God, for you live and reign forever and ever. Amen. Eternal rest grant unto him, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon him. May he rest in peace. May his soul and the souls of all the faithful departed, through the mercy of God, rest in peace.
Thanks very much, Father. If anyone would like to lay some flowers on the grave before I'll say a few words of thanks to close the ceremony. In closing, I'd like to thank everyone for attending today. I'd like to thank in particular the Croy Historical Society, Tommy Canavan, Frank McCool, Jim Pollock, Tony McAtee, Joe Donachie, Barry McGonigal and Danny Rooney for all their assistance, and also OSAV for providing the PA system. From Celtic, we'd like to thank Tony Hamilton, Paul Cuddihy, John Paul Taylor and Adrian Philby for their continued support. And we have a small presentation, just a small presentation to make to Fergus as a mark of our appreciation, which I'd like to ask Frank Hanaway to present. The next Celtic Graves Society event will be in honour of the great Jimmy McMenemy in St Peter's Dalbeth over the next couple of months. We'd love to see you all there. We're going to lay some flowers at the grave of Jimmy Quinn's grandson near the car park at the bottom of the cemetery if anyone would like to join us. We'd like to finish in true Fergus style. You need to pay for that, Fergus, now, remember. That's not free. We'd like to finish in true Fergus style by reminding everyone that we have souvenir booklets available to mark today's occasion. At only £3 for 40 pages. Fergus would be proud of me. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
And all that's in between, that was Brother Walford's dream. We see no colour, we see no race nor creed, we stand together, that was Brother Walford's dream. I know he's looking down on us and smiles on what he sees. In this place called paradise, united in belief. Through the wind and through the rain and throughout history, we won't forget our brother's dream. We see no colour, we see no race nor creed, we stand together.